Hi, it's Susanna Keith from Tech and Travel Mom Moments. We are so thrilled to be here with another episode. As you know, our episodes are about tech, innovation, and empowering our audiences. We're so thrilled today to be here creating a show for Rye TV, YouTube, and even a Facebook Live. So this is really exciting. And I am so honored to be here today with the amazing Cheryl Strauss Einhorn.
Nice to be here.
She has a fantastic new book, Problem Solved, and I was very thrilled to be at a mutual friend's house and hear about your book, because what's really amazing about this, she also has a great site called areamethod.com, is that it's about how anyone from a busy working mom to a third world nation to a teenager to a professor to McKinsey to a CMO can figure out a methodology to solve a problem. And I think that's fantastic, and it's something that we definitely all need. So Cheryl, tell us, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. So originally, this was a way for me to do a more ethical job at work. My background is in investigative journalism. I spent a decade as an editor and columnist at the business magazine Barron's. Wow. And I sort of ended up specializing in what you might call the bearish company story. Those are stories that when they come out, take a skeptical look at a company's finances or at their strategy. And when the stories would come out, sometimes there'd be a very large share price reaction. The stock price would drop a lot, or regulators would get involved, or sometimes the criminal justice system. And I realized that these stories had a big impact on people, not just on somebody's investment portfolio, but potentially on somebody's retirement account, or their ability to work at these companies, or their ability to buy products and services. So if you were buying, let's say, diabetic test kits from a company called Polymedica, and I was writing that they'd just been raided by the FBI, these were stories that really were having a big impact. So I started to think about, how could I have better confidence and conviction in my own decision making? And how also could I better understand the incentives and motives of the sources who often came to me with those stories, ideas? And at the same time, researchers were just beginning to talk about how we all are flawed thinkers. We have these assumptions and biases and judgments, and we certainly need them when we go to the supermarket, for instance. If we were in the cereal aisle and we didn't know what kind of cereal we liked, we'd have choice fatigue. And so we rely upon them, but these same mental shortcuts don't go away when we're solving for complex problems. And given that I'm a middle-class kid from outside of Boston, I thought, I don't know what I don't know. And I thought it's hubris to think we could actually have a beginner's mind, that we could look at a data set or information and say, well, I'm going to be objective now. So instead I thought, well, given my background in research, maybe I could cobble together a process that basically goes all in on this idea that we're flawed thinkers. And then maybe I could set up a construct to help me control for and to counteract these cognitive biases. And so I came up with what I now call my area method, and it uses perspective taking as that process that allows us to really control for and counteract these biases. Because perspective taking gives you a beautiful 2-for-1. It allows you to step into somebody else's vantage point, have an opportunity to understand their incentives and their motives for their behavior, and then it allows for a nice mirroring effect, giving you distance on your own thoughts and feelings to allow you time to bubble up your assumptions and judgments.
Oh my gosh, Cheryl, I love this because, I went to Bryn Mawr College and I went to NYU, and so I'm all about the case study, and then I'm a brand marketer. It's all about case studies, best practices. Give us an example of a case study that you talk about in your book without giving away the book.
Well, I talk about 4 high-stakes decisions in the book, 2 that are personal decisions and 2 that are professional decisions. And one of the examples that I think resonates with a lot of people is we all know somebody or have helped somebody probably make that college decision. And so one of the examples in the book is of a young boy, Micah, who's deciding between 2 very different college options. He could go to Johns Hopkins with no financial aid or get some financial aid at Pitt. And the truth of the matter is, for many people right there, that financial component, that would be the main decision-making criteria that they would use. But for Micah, he is the only child of 2 professional parents, and he didn't have to choose just on that criteria. And Micah knew that he wanted to be a doctor, and he began to look at his decision and what the area method, which is what Problem Solved introduces, that's the name of my methodology. What it basically says is, let's invert decision making, right? Most of the times, I think people often find it a bit off-putting or even frustrating to face down a big complex problem, right? So they don't know where to start or where to look for information. So the area method says, don't worry about that. Flip it upside down and use the inversion, and instead ask yourself something that I think is far more empowering, which is, what do I need to see happen in the outcome so that I know that the decision has succeeded? And now you're no longer solving for an open-ended research problem. Now you've defined the criteria that you need to see to know what would be successful for you, and now you can define what I call your critical concepts, the 1, 2, or 3 things that have to happen in the outcome for that vision of success to come true. And so that's really where he started. And he realized that he needed a place that was not only going to be able to help him get onto medical school, but that would also provide an undergraduate research opportunity. And he began his search then with those defined critical concepts, and then he moved from one perspective to the next. In absolute, which is the first A in area, he studied information from both of the 2 colleges, which showed very different pictures, right? Johns Hopkins is about the Nobel Prize winners and the august history of the institution.
And the Under Armour. And lacrosse.
And Pitt was very much focusing on its website, talking about information such as the student-teacher ratio, what kind of undergraduate extracurricular activities there are, and seemed much more outwardly focused. In relative information, which is the next concentric circle of information, those are sources somehow related to his target of his decision. He got information from College Confidential about what students said about the 2 institutions. He went on Rate My Professor to see what people said about the professors that taught the pre-med courses. He looked at rankings, for instance, from U.S. News and World Report. And then the next concentric circle of information is Area E. But Area E is both exploration and exploitation. I call them the twin engines of creativity.
Love it.
Exploration gets you beyond document-based research to actually talk to people who have information to help you make your decision. And then area exploitation is actually a series of exercises that I've learned from other experts in intelligence gathering and investigative journalism and medicine that help you really look at your assumptions against your evidence. And so in those 2 areas in exploration, he spoke to students who were at those 2 universities and recent alumni about the undergraduate pre-med programs at Pitt and Hopkins. And he also talked to the pre-med advising offices to see what sort of resources were available. And this was really a big change for him, because in his exploration work, he really found out that those undergraduate advising offices are really pivotal to helping you navigate through these rigorous body of courses to get onto medical school. And he kept hearing over and again, this was just his research in a snapshot in time, that the Pitt office was accessible, really hands-on, and good at problem solving. And that the Hopkins advising office was really overwhelmed. There were so many students, they weren't that accessible. And so when he got to exploitation and when he looked at his assumptions against his evidence, he actually realized that he was solving for the wrong problem. It wasn't which college to go to. It was which school would help him get through that rigorous undergraduate pre-med program.
Oh my gosh, that's so great.
To help him get to college. And so he realized if he couldn't get through those pre-med courses, he couldn't actually be applying to medical school.
Right.
And so it fundamentally changed the research question that he was looking at. And He realized, therefore, that he needed more information again about those 2 undergraduate advising offices. And when he got to his area analysis, the final A in area, he then did a pre-mortem. I think of it like, to the extent that we can ever make our mistakes before we make them, the pre-mortem is an exercise that basically says, pretend your decision has failed. Write the story of the failure so that you can not only see how your decision might go awry, but then you can also construct safeguards to prevent it from failing in that way. And so he ultimately ended up surprisingly going to Pitt and also making sure that through that help of the pre-mortem that he reached out in advance to this pre-med advising office that he was going to be matriculating at Pitt, making sure he had good contacts there and older students who were already in the undergraduate program to really help guide him as well,
right?
So that by the time he completed his area method decision-making process, he had confidence and conviction, not only in the thought process, but in the information he collected and in his analysis.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Wow, Cheryl, I tell you, as we have 2 more kids going to college, we are definitely going to be reading this, and they are definitely going to be studying this book. That's such a great case study example. So one last little question. Tell us, I mean, this is really exciting. You had Tony Blair write your introduction, or is it forward? I
It's
forget
the forward.
Forward.
Yes.
How did you do work with him with public policy? I mean, wow.
So I initially met him through an overlapping interest that we have. He has a charitable organization that helps to promote pluralism and tolerance.
Oh, wow.
And we had made an investment in that. And I then ended up meeting him and doing some work with him around a series of work that he was doing on education as a security issue and really promoting education towards the open mind. And then one day he asked, what's new with me? And I told him that I had just written this book. And he said, well, what is it on? And I said, complex decision making. And we had a good laugh because he said, I know a thing or two about that.
Right.
So he asked to read the book, and then he actually offered to write the foreword. And the way that he puts it is, he said, you know, he really thinks of this like the vitamins or the shots that you get as a kid, which is this basic idea that we all need a decision-making system before we're really facing a complex problem. Because when you're in that moment and you need to know how to make a decision, you need to have it at your ready.
Oh my gosh, that's just so perfect. Thank you. Well, Cheryl, I have to tell you again, incredibly inspired. Now I feel like I need to write a book, but I'm definitely going to use your complex decision making to see what's right, what's not right, and where to kind of map things out, especially like, I mean, this works with family, this works with friends, this works with careers. Wow. So I look forward to hopefully your next book, but thank you so much for your time today and making a difference in our community.
Thank you so much
with
for
helping
having
everyone.
me.
So again, this is Susanna Keith. This has been another one of our Tech and Travel Moments. We'll be doing some more upcoming episodes. As you can see, this one is definitely about innovation and youth programming and inspiration. But please reach out to us at techandtravelmom.com and let us know what you think. Thank you.